Hi guys, I'm Dashika Street. This is the Weekend Extra. I'm here with Pastor Todd. We're currently in the series Here and Now, and we're talking about parents and teens. So, Pastor Todd, how are you?
How's it going, Dashika? It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well. The message today was very, very dynamic, especially being the mom of a teen, and an early teen at that. So it's like we're both kind of in that space of learning the relationship of parent and teen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just really interesting seeing children develop, especially teens, and kind of all the intricacies that are involved in that emotionally, mentally, all those things. And then the relationship, that we're called to have as parents. And in your message today, you spoke on two key topics, not topics, but points, the conviction and the ownership that we have as parents.
Yep.
And I think oftentimes when we think about that conviction or ownership, there can be a lot of heaviness and a lot of questioning. Am I doing this right? The advice I'm giving my child, is it good advice? How is it going to help them in their relationship with their peers or with their younger or older siblings? And how is it going to help them to be like a happy, wholesome person, a good person? And so can you tap a little bit or tap more into what that conviction and that ownership is like, or what that relationship should be, that onus should be between a parent and a teen?
Well, I think we could easily put a lot of pressure on ourselves about, am I doing a good job? Are my children being raised in the way they should go? And sometimes that pressure can get the best of us, right? And I think that's where the role and the position of the Lord comes into our lives, right? I think God has entrusted us with the kids that we have, right? They're gifts from God.
Absolutely.
Right? And that comes with the good, the bad, right? But I think that's where, in those moments, we can't let the pressure and the pressure that we place on ourselves get the best of us in that moment. We need to trust and rely on the Lord, because ultimately they're His, right?
Absolutely.
We're His. And so when we rely on Him, for Him to show up in those moments, it kind of gives us the confidence and also gives us the assurance that we're doing the right thing. But I think it's important that we're setting the example, right? We first have to go to God. We have to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. The example starts there. From there, our kids can then follow that example. Right.
Absolutely. And seeing that example, that's a really good point. Yeah. Because in seeing that, even especially like the dynamics between parents and children, especially in those teen years, can be pretty up and down, and when they see and experience you loving them no matter what, you leaning on God for understanding, for patience, for strength, for answers to whatever their questions might be, or this kind of rough and up and down period that you may be going through as a parent, dealing with a teen, it gives them something to kind of draw on, as they deal with the difficulties in their life, some of which they never talk to you about because they're, teens and kind of finding their own way, and some they might come to you later, but also those dynamics that are outside of the home, perhaps in school or with teachers and other peers and things like that.
And I think that's important because our kids aren't going to share everything with us, right? We're mom and dad. And it's like, we're going to leave them as out of this one, right? But I think that's where the role of other people come into play, right? So what I talked about tonight was the importance of influence. And I had many men and women come alongside of me in my life to help meet me in those voids and gaps of my life where Mom might have not been setting, the place where I would go, or my dad was out of the picture. And so he wasn't an individual I could go to. And so I think that's where the importance of other people play that role, to create that safe place for our students and our kids to go to.
Agreed. So you gave a couple points on, creating that circle of influence, so to speak, looking ahead. So looking at who are the people that we have in our lives as parents influencing us, and what are those takeaways that we're able to use and kind of trickle down through our family. Looking beside us, and also thinking about the dynamic of our children, looking beside them and what those peer relationships are. Yeah. But then also taking the time to look back and seeing who is watching, because children, as we know, are always watching. Right. They may not always admit to it, they may not always.
Oh, but they are.
Right, but they are. And every once in a while you get those glimmers where you see they were listening, or they did. So that gives, as parents, that can give us a hope and a surge of encouragement to know that just stay the course, continue to stay dedicated, read your word, have prayer. Talk to them about the good of Jesus. Also talk to them about perhaps mistakes that you've made to help them know that they can also make it through some of those issues as well.
Yeah, right on.
Case in point, when I was in college, I had a terrible time with math. I was struggling with math. And so I was very diligent about being a great note taker, saving all of my tests, all of my homework, quizzes, and those sorts of things, because I knew that at some point my kids were either going to meet or exceed me in math. Yeah. And I wanted to be able to help them through that situation without being, just kind of scratching my head. And so I saved these binders of notes and so forth. And a week or two ago, my daughter texted me from school, and she's like, "Mom, I have a test today in math, and I forgot to study, and I can't remember anything." And she had worked the couple days before on this project, and she was so excited and kind of consumed all of her time. And I'm texting her back, probably shouldn't have been. She was in class, but I'm like, it's going to be okay. And she was like, "I just don't know what to do. I don't want to get an F. I'm really worried. Can I go leave class and talk to somebody?" She was having a meltdown. And so this binder I had just pulled up a couple weeks ago. I ran to the bookshelf, grabbed this binder, and found some of my tests and quizzes where I got Fs, and it was like, and so I took pictures of it and sent it to her. I said, "It'll be okay. Yeah, I graduated college. You'll make it through 7th grade. Right. An F isn't going to break you. You know." But that was me kind of looking ahead and saying, how can I help my future generation or the generation to come after me in a time where I know they might need assistance and I might not have all the tools, memory, or recollection to provide that. And so sometimes it can be our peer groups, the people we look to as mentors, spiritual leaders, and so forth. Sometimes it could just also be planning. What do you think about that?
I think that's excellent. What a great example, right? That is an instance in your life where, hey, it was a trial for you. You were fighting through that. It showed back up to where you could lead your daughter in that moment, and that's so cool. And I think that's important, like understanding that we don't necessarily have to have it all together.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, we're not perfect beings. We're going to mess up. We're going to sometimes give them example that might not be the best example to follow. Let's just be honest, right? Yeah. And I think that's one thing that people always ask, even about my dad. It's like, well, was that an example that you want to follow? I'm like, well, of course not. But as I look at my relationship with my dad, and there's so much more to that story that I just didn't have time to press into. But my dad eventually came to know the Lord. And we did start to rekindle a relationship, and he showed up at my wedding, which was really cool.
That's incredible.
But even then, I look back at how my relationship with my dad was, and I'm like, that's the example of what not to do, right? I look at that, and I'm like, okay, though not a positive example, as I was growing up into, to being an adult, to being a husband, and now being a dad, I'm like, okay, well, that's what I don't want to do. And so I can still learn from that, even when it's not perfect, right?
Absolutely.
And the mistakes that we make. And so I think that's awesome. I love that we get to come alongside of our children and let them know this, like, hey, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what we're doing sometimes.
Absolutely. I think that humanizes the relationship between parent and child. And I think when you have the opportunity to do that, you can really, make some headway and really see some breakthroughs in that relationship. And going back to the story, about your dad, just look at all the resilience, the power of forgiveness that was shown in that, example, and also just the power of God and, how he rekindled that relationship and really moved in his life. Those are the things, though. Our walk is never promised to be straight or without difficulty.
Got it.
But we're supposed to learn, and we're supposed to have a testimony. And, as disciples, we're supposed to be able to share those stories so that we can't, that's leading the next generation, saying, hey, I went through these challenges, but look how I came out. And look at all this collateral beauty that came out of it.
You get to see the goodness of God in those moments.
Absolutely.
Right? His graciousness and being present always. Right? That's awesome. That's good.
Awesome. Well, this has been the Weekend Extra. I am with Pastor Todd. I'm Dashika, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.